response you're hearing is the 911 calls of the night 19-year-old Mallory Beach disappeared.
911, where's your emergency? Police, fire, ambulance? Hello? Tell everybody just try to stay as calm as they can, okay? I know it's hard.
6 passengers, the caller says.
All 5 of us are on the same boat. We're missing one person.
Right, okay.
And the missing woman they mentioned was Mallory Beach.
What you just heard was the 911 call made just moments after a 17-foot boat crashed into the piling of a bridge in the low country of South Carolina. When the boat hit the piling, 19-year-old Mallory Beach and her boyfriend, Anthony Cook, were ejected from the boat. One of them came up from the depths. The other did not. Now, this is a bizarre story, an epically bizarre true crime story that seems to begin with a boat, a bunch of friends, and some beer. But later, it goes strangely beyond all that and takes the most unexpected twists and turns. It began in a tiny town in South Carolina, a place called Hampton, where for more than a century, one family has quietly but firmly ruled over all the legal goings-on. They are a legal dynasty of sorts, on a small yet powerful scale. I'm talking about the Murdaughs, and up until all the murderous madness went down, they ran both the prosecutor's office as well as a large civil law firm. They're the kind of rich and influential family that many might view as being the top of the socioeconomic food chain. When it came to the Murdaughs, many people living in the area likely had the attitude that it's best not to mess with the Murdaughs because you aren't going to get anywhere. Such was the power and influence of this family. But no one, at least from what I can tell, feared that interacting with a Murdaugh could lead to death. Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T, and if true crime is your jam, and like me, you like delving into unsolved crimes, trying to figure out who done it, please consider subscribing to my channel. This is episode 1, The Boat Crash, of a multi-episode series called The Murdaugh Family Mystery. It is dedicated to Mallory Beach. It was the evening of Saturday, February 23rd, 2019. A waning gibbous moon offered some illumination in a mostly foggy night sky. 19-year-old Mallory Beach was out with her longtime boyfriend, Anthony Cook. Let's talk a little bit about Mallory. Mallory was a beautiful, popular girl with Instagram looks, long, shiny blonde hair, and a radiant smile. And she'd recently graduated from high school. Here's what Mallory's aunt, Lynn Rivas, who enjoyed an especially close relationship with her niece, told 48 Hours about Mallory. She was just this wonderful, fun-loving, happy girl, and everybody loved her. End quote. Although Mallory had girly girl, prom queen looks and loved animals, she also apparently had a tomboy part to her personality. She played on her high school soccer team, and she loved hunting with her dad. After graduation, Mallory was working at the It's Retail Therapy clothing store in Beaufort, South Carolina. Now, on this Saturday evening in February, Mallory and her boyfriend Anthony were hanging out with a group of their friends, including 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh. Paul was the son of 49-year-old Margaret, or Maggie, Murdaugh, and R. Alexander Murdaugh, better known as Alex. Then 50 years old, Alex was, like his father before him, in the family business and working as a prominent local attorney. Photos of the Murdaughs online show an attractive family who were seemingly enjoying the good life. There are pictures of Maggie and Alex on a boat smiling, at a black tie charity event, at their son Paul's high school graduation. They were obviously prosperous, which allowed them to purchase multiple properties in the area as well as a boat. You get the idea. Maggie and Alex had one other child, their firstborn, ginger-haired son, Richard Buster Murdaugh, or Buster as he was called. Buster was 4 years older than his brother Paul. So on this night in February, along with Paul Murdaugh, Mallory and Anthony were also spending time with Anthony's cousin, Connor Cook, and Connor's girlfriend, Miley Altman. The 6 young couples were all excited about going to a house party and oyster roast on Pokey Island. Pokey Island is a waterfront community and has been called one of Beaufort's best-kept deep water secrets. As for the oyster roast, apparently they are to South Carolina what lobster boils are to Maine and crawfish boils are to Louisiana. An oyster roast is basically a large party where oysters are steamed to perfection and placed in buckets, and then the buckets are handed over to guests along with an oyster knife, a glove, and a cold drink, usually a cold beer. So the 3 couples decided to meet first at Murdaugh Island, a river property with a private residence owned by, you guessed it, the Murdaughs. The plan was for Paul to ferry his 5 friends to Pokey Island in his parents' 17-foot center console sea hunt fishing boat. Here's how investigators believe the night went down. At around 6:30 p.m., Anthony, Mallory, Paul, and his girlfriend Morgan, and Connor and his girlfriend Miley gathered at Murdaugh Island. Now, although all 6 of the friends were under the legal drinking age in South Carolina, which is 21, they were about to do what many carefree, newly graduated young adults do on a Saturday night. They were planning to do a little partying. And part of that, at least for some of the kids, included drinking alcohol. Now, before anyone judges these kids for breaking the law, let's all think back to our own high school days. I will admit that my friends and I did the same sort of thing back in the day. We'd pool our monies and then ask a friend of legal drinking age to buy us the booze, usually a few bottles of Boone's Farm Tickle Pink wine. Yuck, right? We never had a problem getting our hands on alcohol. But let me make it also clear that I'm not condoning this behavior, and I'm definitely not saying anyone should do this. Quite the contrary, as this story will show. Reckless drinking at any age can lead to life-changing tragedies. So, to prepare for the fun, Paul Murdaugh had gone with some of his friends to a local convenience store earlier in the day. And, using his older brother Buster's ID, he bought some beer for the night's festivities. Before the friends showed up at Murdaugh Island, Paul filled a cooler with ice and bottles of Corona, Budweiser, and Michelob Ultra Light beers. We know for certain that Paul bought the booze because there is a still image from the store's security camera video showing him outside the store giving his friends a Rocky Balboa type arms up victory sign. I'm guessing this was to show them that his ruse in using Buster's ID to buy beer had worked. The young adults told investigators that they left Murdaugh's river house by boat around 7 p.m. Next, according to Miley Altman, the group stayed at the oyster roast on Pokey Island for several hours. Around midnight, Miley said she left the party with her boyfriend Connor Cook, Paul Murdaugh, and his girlfriend Morgan, Anthony Cook, and of course Mallory Beach. According to Miley, when it was time to get back on the boat, Paul insisted on taking the boat along the Beaufort River to a bar in downtown Beaufort. Miley told investigators he just was very persistent about going up and getting a shot, end quote. Investigators were able to pull up records from the boat's Garmin GPS device, which showed the young adults docking the boat around 12:45 a.m. Once there, Paul and Connor got off the boat and went to a waterfront bar called Luther's Rare and Well Done, where they ordered 2 rounds of shots. It's said that both Paul and Connor downed the shots in a matter of minutes. Connor later testified that he had used a fake ID to get into the bar, and Paul had once again pulled out Buster's ID. Investigators were able to obtain surveillance video from the bar, and sure enough, it showed the 2 young men seated at the bar. While Paul and Connor were enjoying their shots inside, the other 4 friends lingered at a nearby park. About a half hour later, Paul and Connor rejoined their friends. At approximately 1:15 a.m., a security camera on the dock captured the 6 friends walking back down to where the boat was waiting. In what are the last known images of Mallory, the footage shows her and Anthony playfully walking down the dock together. The 6 friends got back on the boat and started to head for home. But by now, the river was dark and foggy. And unfortunately, the Murdaughs' boat either didn't have a light on it or the light wasn't working. Either way, they did not have the assistance of light to guide them. And it sounds like most of the friends at this point, except maybe for Paul, were no longer having a good time. It was late, they were cold and tired, and they just wanted to get home. Now, according to statements Miley Altman made to investigators, once Paul Murdaugh was at the wheel, he began piloting the boat in circles. She said Paul was acting drunk, and he was just driving, doing donuts, end quote. This is when what's been described as Paul Murdaugh's alter ego, Timmy, made his appearance. Paul's friends had apparently christened him with this moniker after noticing that when he drank, Paul would often turn into a wild, aggressive, loose-cannoned type of person. Anthony described the atmosphere on the boat at this time. We argued the whole way. Everybody was fighting and arguing. We drifted around in circles numerous times. We idled long. Mallory was steady hollering that she had to go to work the next morning. She was ready to go. That she was wanting to hurry up and get home. And all Paul was doing was making a fool of himself. All there was to it, really. The arguing the whole time, and then Paul, for some reason, acted like he was on drugs or something. He started taking his clothes off during one of the arguments, and it's 40 degrees outside, end quote. The way the friends describe this Timmy person or persona, it sounds like Paul may have suffered from an angry, aggressive personality type that was amplified when he drank booze. Boats and booze are a notoriously lethal combination. Paul Murdaugh's own girlfriend, Morgan, later testified that Paul also kept leaving the wheel to fight with her. Paul was allegedly behaving in such an unhinged manner that some of the other guys on the boat tried to take over the wheel, including Anthony Cook. But Paul wasn't having it. He said it was his boat and he was going to pilot it. Anthony even asked Paul repeatedly to let him and the others off at a nearby dock and offered to pay for an Uber to get everyone home. Along with not allowing anyone else to drive the boat, Paul refused to let anyone get off. Paul was also allegedly pushing and slapping Morgan and was pretty much angry at everyone. When asked by investigators why Paul was so pissed, Anthony Cook replied, "Because everybody was trying to talk him into letting me drive the boat, and he wasn't having it no different," end quote. When asked what Paul was saying about why he didn't want Anthony driving the boat, Anthony said that Paul was saying it's his boat and don't nobody know the effing river like he does, and he's the only one driving the effing boat, end quote. And according to Morgan, Mallory was becoming scared at this point. Anthony, ever the loving, caring boyfriend, tried to comfort her. Here is what he told investigators about these final minutes before the crash. I finally got to the point I grabbed my girlfriend and put her in my lap at the bottom of the boat, and I was holding on with my eyes closed. End quote. Investigators would later discover from the onboard Garmin GPS that right around the time all this crap was going down, the boat's speed increased markedly. Miley Altman told investigators that she saw the bridge coming. The person at the helm was going for broke, full speed ahead. Just before 2:20 a.m., the boat smashed into a piling near the Archers Creek Bridge, just outside of Paris Island. Seconds before the boat crashed, GPS data obtained by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources indicated that the vessel was traveling at a speed of approximately 29 miles per hour or 25. Upon the boat's impact with the bridge, Mallory, who was, remember, sitting on the floor of the boat with Anthony's arms wrapped tightly around her, was flung into the dark, cold water along with Anthony. But unlike Anthony, who soon surfaced, Mallory did not come up from the indigo depths. Anthony's cousin, Connor, immediately dialed 911 for help. Connor's voice is actually very slow in the 911 call, and I think it's because of the 2 shots he had just done with Paul at the bar in downtown Beaufort. Mallory's boyfriend, Anthony Cook, was later caught on dashcam footage that same night, telling the investigators of the uphill battle he or anyone else would have against Paul or any of the Murdaugh family. Anthony said this. The then Beaufort County Deputy Sheriff Stephen Domino was one of the first responders to arrive. Domino described to 48 Hours the chaos he encountered at the crash. Everybody was crying, scared, shocked, just worried about their friend, end quote. Domino found Mallory's boyfriend, Anthony, distressed and pacing near the crash site. After calming Anthony down, Domino asked him to sit in his patrol car. According to the deputy sheriff, when Paul Murdaugh walked up to the patrol car from the boat, Anthony grew agitated and tried to rush through the deputy sheriff to get to Paul. Domino explained, because I guess he, meaning Anthony, saw him, meaning Paul, smiling, and it just set him off again, end quote. Yes, Anthony said that Paul Murdaugh was smiling just after the boat crash. Anthony Cook then told Domino that he saw Paul Murdaugh driving the boat right before the crash. All the passengers, except for Mallory, who was yet to be found, and her boyfriend, Anthony, who insisted on staying behind at the scene, were transported to the hospital. Now, to me, Anthony is the hero of this story. He obviously cared deeply for Mallory, and he showed such maturity to try and protect her, first by trying to get to the wheel to take over the boat, next by asking Paul to let them all off the boat and offering to pay for the Uber, and then by trying to shield Mallory from the accident, and finally by staying near the water to try and ensure that Mallory was rescued that night. According to the hospital staff, Connor Cook was treated for a broken jaw, and Paul Murdaugh's girlfriend, Morgan, was suffering from a severe injury to her hand. The staff also related to investigators that Paul Murdaugh was uncooperative. Despite that, they did manage to draw Paul's blood. Several hours after the boat crash, Paul Murdaugh's blood alcohol content, or BAC, was .24. That's 3 times over the legal limit. Apparently, the Department of Natural Resources officers reported that all the passengers were intoxicated, but sobriety tests were not administered. This was because the boat's driver wasn't 100% identified, apparently, and testing more than one person could lead to the case being dismissed if charges were filed. According to the Port Royal Police Department, officers did finally manage to narrow down the driver to one of 2 people on the boat, Paul Murdaugh and Connor Cook. But wait, note that in 2021, Connor filed a lawsuit against Paul's father, Alex Murdaugh, claiming that he tried to frame him as the driver of the boat that night. And knowing what we now do of Alex Murdaugh, that seems like a likely possibility. At the hospital on the night of the crash, Paul apparently borrowed Miley Altman's phone to call his family. I'm assuming Paul's phone was lost perhaps during the boat crash. Listen to what Miley told law enforcement the day after the crash about Paul's behavior at the hospital.
Paul took your phone to call his granddad. Why did he call his granddad? Did he say why? Why did he call his dad? Or was there?
Because, like, you know, they're lawyers out there. He wanted him to be in there, too. Because he just called his granddad because that's what he does in everything.
Your guy had a lawyer?
Yes.
But he didn't want to call his dad.
It's ironic that Paul wanted to call his grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh III, first before calling his own father, Alex. Alex must have been called by someone, though, because he soon showed up at the hospital, according to the staff. According to statements from witnesses at the hospital, Alex Murdaugh was going from room to room trying to speak to his son's injured friends. I'm sure he was. Ever the lawyer, right? Possibly trying to control the narrative to perhaps protect his son Paul, protect his family from a costly lawsuit, and so on. Allegedly. This is all allegedly, because this is a powerful family. Said local journalist Michael DeWitt, who has covered the Murdaugh family and the boat crash extensively for the Hampton County Guardian newspaper, I think from day one, ground zero, the effort was, what can we do to get Paul out of this? How can we create a cloud of confusion and say, can you prove who was driving the boat? End quote. In a deposition, Connor Cook said that Alex Murdaugh told him that he didn't need to tell anyone who was driving. End quote. And a hospital security guard went on the record saying he overheard Alex Murdaugh saying on his cell phone, "She's gone. Don't worry." If Alex Murdaugh really did say that, I would like to ask him what he meant exactly by it. It sounds to me like he may be talking about Mallory Beach. If he was, that is a very cold way to talk about a 19-year-old young woman who had her whole life ahead of her, who died in a river after being thrown from a boat that your son had been piloting at various times during the evening. Following the crash, investigators and volunteers using rescue boats, divers, and helicopters spent 8 exhausting days looking for Mallory. Yes, this story does not have a happy ending, unfortunately. On March 3rd, 2019, this call came in to 911.
911, where's your emergency?
This is Ken Campbell. We're on the search team rescue. We think we found her.
The her the man was referring to was Mallory. Two fishermen located Mallory's body more than 5 miles downriver from the crash site. The coroner's office later reported that Mallory died of drowning and secondary blunt force. So it sounds like her head or something, he struck the piling perhaps. Something knocked her out. On March 29th of 2019, Mallory's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against members of the Murdaugh family. Three weeks later, on what would have been Mallory's 20th birthday, Paul Murdaugh was charged with multiple felonies: boating under the influence resulting in the death of Mallory Beach, and serious bodily injuries to 2 passengers, Connor Cook and Morgan. And actually, Paul got off pretty easy with just those charges. He could have faced additional charges in connection with his alleged role in the fatal crash and the events leading up to it. For example, he could have been charged with assault for allegedly pushing and slapping Morgan, and he could also have possibly been charged with kidnapping for allegedly refusing to hand over control of the boat and for refusing to allow passengers off. It's no surprise that Paul, guided by his father Alex and a team of hotshot lawyers hired to represent him, pled not guilty to all charges. Connor Cook's lawyers also filed a petition on behalf of him asking for an investigation into collusion and civil conspiracy. Why, you might ask? Well, Connor believes Alex Murdaugh was trying to frame him as being the driver of the boat when it crashed into the piling. There's no way that Paul Murdaugh, still intoxicated from the night's partying, the beers, the shots, could have possibly foreseen the ripple effects that his behavior that Saturday night and early Sunday morning in February would have had on his life. He would not have been smiling as he walked toward Anthony Cook, who was sitting in that patrol car, had he been able to look into a crystal ball and see the after effects of this tragic boat crash. Next time on Bed Crime Stories, follow me as we journey farther into the heart of darkness and watch as the famed Murdaugh family falls from grace and itself encounters cold, ice-cold evil. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave me a comment. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories.